It's time for the Prophecy Pulse podcast, tuning in to heaven's end time signals with your host, Nick Johnston of Never Unprepared Ministries.
So you came prepared, George.
Well, so I noticed on your website, neverunprepared.org, you've got several categories. And when you select podcast,
Yeah.
That's what this session is about. We're going to record some podcasts.
Yeah, I figured I'd do a podcast like maybe by chapter or a group of chapters. So if somebody is reading and wants a little bit more information or more a little behind the thought, they get tuned in on that. Or maybe, they might use it as a small group lead in, something like that.
Got you.
I don't know exactly yet, but I think it's going to be a work in progress.
Are you going to include questions, perhaps, as a guide for small groups, since there was no
study guide
in the
no
the
study
book?
guide yet.
Gotcha. Okay.
I remember I tried, and most people wanted more information than the book had. So, but I do have plans for a study guide of some sort.
Nice.
Point. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. Well, so how would you like to begin?
Well, the website is called Never Unprepared, even though the book is called, Eavesdropping on Heaven. You'd think I'd make the website as the name of the book, but the idea is we want to be prepared no matter what, no matter what theology is the prevailing, what idea and theology is prevailing at the time. We want to be prepared for God, for Jesus' return. And I think there's a lot involved in that, not just reading this book, but in our lives. So I've got other things I want to add to that website in the future. And there'll probably be other books somewhat related, but not directly, that'll be dealing with how to prepare ourselves.
Nice.
So.
Gotcha. Do you want to begin by talking about the book and maybe some of the origins, because you have a nice introduction in here.
Yeah, let's do that. The book looks daunting because it's so thick, but I purposely made it big font because this kind of book can be, kind of a put off if you look at a book that's got tiny writing and it's got footnotes and charts and stuff.
Yeah,
it starts becoming a little intimidating. So the font is nice size. Yeah,
it's easy to read. I thought it's a lot to read, but it is easy to read. So tell me about the background. Why did you pursue this, and why did you write it?
Yeah, I've had a lot of people ask me that. I did not intend to write a book. That's now been 4 years ago, almost exactly 4 years ago. I started researching a lot of notes I'd taken. I've read the book through, the Bible through more than 20 times by then, probably 25 times or so. And I kept little note cards with questions on them that just didn't seem to make sense with the theology I grew up with, or what I'd learned in my churches I attended. And a lot of these note cards had to do with prophecies that weren't lining up with the prevailing idea of how the end was going to happen. And I got to the point in 2021, well, actually it was 2020, I just couldn't get to it till 2021, that I have so many of these. I had boxes of them, like little card boxes. And I thought, this is just too many questions. I've got to get some answers. And so I decided to take my Christmas break in 2021 to start researching that. And I thought I'd have the answer at Christmas break, but all it told me was there's a lot more to this than what people are saying. And so I began a methodical search through. I read the Bible through twice with this sole goal of finding anything related to any aspect of prophecy, of end-time prophecy. And I did that in a short time. So that probably took about 2 months to read through continuously. Got a lot of information on the first time through, got a lot more that I missed on the second time through, and I'm sure there's more I still need to get. But by the time I'd read it through the second time, I realized things aren't exactly as we've been told. So I started I started ordering a bunch of charts, end time charts from everybody I could find on the internet. Looked at the ones that were available for free, and then paid to order other ones, and laid them out, and marked out where the major events were. Kind of had my things I had found on prophecy laid out too, and I just couldn't fit a lot of my things I'd found in there. So this is funny. These guys have spent lots of time on this, and each of these, of course, they're all really had a baseline that was similar, and so I decided to start making my own. Well, that's pretty daunting. Try to make your own chart.
Sure.
And to do that, you have to find out things that are, you know for sure, like we know for sure in Daniel 9 that there's a 70-week period, and the last of those weeks is our end time.
And that's sort of universally accepted.
Yeah, yeah.
As being a description of the end times. The particulars are where you got bogged down.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
So yeah, you could get that universally accepted 7 years, and then he also says in the middle of that 7 years is the abomination that causes desolation, where the Antichrist steps into the temple that's going to be rebuilt. So those things are, you could put some parameters, but then the things that are difficult to place are like when the two witnesses appear. We know they're there for 3.5 years. We know there's 2 3.5 year periods, separated by the abomination of desolation. Does it happen before? Does it happen after? And so these things, and there's other clues that help you figure that out, but I couldn't find a consistent one in any of those charts. So my process only went so far before I had to figure out, well, why does the end times have to happen at all? And because you couldn't understand the end times without understanding why we have to have a 7-year period.
Interesting. I think a lot of people just accept that, well, there are end times without asking why.
Yeah.
Yeah, why the end times?
And once you understand the why, then some of these other things kind of fall into place a little better. It makes more sense. But I never really asked that question when I was reading. I'm a big studier. I like to read, and I've probably read 30 or more end time books, specifically on the end times, and nobody ever really says why. And
no, I think there's more emphasis on which camp you fall into, as premillennialists, post-millennialists, somewhere in between.
Yeah.
When do the believers get caught up into heaven, and those kind of questions, which really drives back to how does it impact me?
Right.
It's a self-interest driver.
That's right.
But not so much thinking about why did God set this up this way in the first place. I've not thought about that.
Yeah, and it's pretty eye-opening when you figure that, when you understand that, and that we are in an interim place in God's plan right now, called the church age. But the intention is to get us back to perfection again, to bring creation back to perfection. The Bible says that all creation is groaning for that point to happen again. It's been so that exists. That means that perfection existed. It doesn't exist now, but it will exist sometime in the future. And why does perfection not exist now? And it's pretty amazing that God allowed chaos to enter into his perfect creation.
Yes, knowing that his people would suffer.
That's right. It's something that's kind of mind-boggling, but it's also pretty amazing that God, who created perfection, who created the universe and everything in it, and it was good. We're told that in Genesis, as he created it was good. Why would he allow imperfection to enter in? I mean, the state of God is perfection. He cannot have imperfection in his presence. He's the creator of perfection. So why would he allow the possibility of imperfection? And that's an interesting study, in that he wanted people he's wanted his creation to legitimately, genuinely love him. And to do that, you can't force the creation You can't force the created thing, that in humans in this case, to love you, because that's not genuine. So you have to give them free choice.
Mm-hmm.
And if you have a perfect system, anything you choose, any direction you choose that's outside of that perfect system leads to imperfection. And of course, that's where we are now when Adam chose that by being deceived by Satan.
Yep.
So we're out of that we're in that imperfect point. And the goal of the end times is to bring everything back to perfection. At the very end of it, we'll be brought back to perfection. But in the interim period, the church age, he's trying to convince people to find him, understand him, love him genuinely, and that's who he wants to spend eternity with. He doesn't want to spend eternity with people that are, okay, this is my rule 1, I've got to pray to Jesus.
Yes.
Rule 2, I've got to love him. He wants those who genuinely, heartfelt love him to spend eternity. And this is the process to do it.
That makes sense. And your book delves into that, but gets more specific about the events of the end times as they are decoded in Scripture, as you have found references in lots of Old Testament and New Testament verses to help unlock a sequence that makes sense. But it's interesting that, to my knowledge, you're one of the first to create this this narrative, this sequence of events in the way that you've done it. You've unlocked something, and I wonder, how would you explain if someone asked, well, why do you know this? How do you know this? How have so many people missed it?
Well, I think it's part of it is we're in the right time. We're in a time where this needs to be known, and I think God has planned for this to become, he says at the end, knowledge will increase, many will run to and fro. We're in the time where knowledge is increasing,
Mm-hmm.
and it's increasing for a reason, and things are becoming more evident. You either use that knowledge to find God, find more information about God, or you use that knowledge to do something else. But he knew there were going to be a certain number of people that would be using this knowledge to find God. I mean, for instance, we talked about this in our small group a while back. There's technology like, there's a website I used a lot, and I still do, called Bible Hub. There's multiple things like that, but it's got about 60 or 70 translations of the Bible. When I first became a Christian for 30 years ago, pretty close, I had a parallel Bible. I thought that was pretty high tech. I could read it in the King James, parallel with the NIV. And so I could say, okay, there's two different aspects here. Now I've got 60 plus aspects. You can look at the nuances of the translations. That's knowledge at our fingertips that just was not available without going to a library, laying out books, pulling through. And I think we're at the time, this is God's plan, is we're at the time where knowledge is increasing. We have the ability to do more research easily, and I think it's just the right time. And I was in that searching mode at the right time. So.
And I think possibly there's a case to be made that people tend to be a bit lazy and just accept falling into one of the camps that we've talked about already, the premillennialists, the post-millennialists, mid-millennialists. If you ever even gave much thought to Revelation and the end times, you would perhaps default to one of those explanations without digging into it yourself, because it is difficult, very difficult.
And that's my whole philosophy on this. It was so difficult. And of course, I said I'd read the Bible more than 20 times. I'd read Daniel, I'd read Ezekiel, I'd read Revelation, and they're just cryptic. There's so many clues interwoven that are just hard to parse. And that to me is why we went to the experts to say, these guys have spent a lot of time studying.
That's right.
They wrote a book, and then most of your books are very similar. There's a few aspects changed, but the theme is generally the same. And I just left it to the experts because this was too difficult to parse myself, and I didn't have the time. And so that's why I think most people fall into that also. I want to know about the end times. Let me read a book by a famous author and find out they know a lot more than me. They've been to seminary, they've done the study,
Right.
and we just take their word for it. And I don't blame them. I think they're doing what they needed to do for the time, or what was available to them for the time. But I think now the information has come to a point where it's accessible, and with the right tools and heart, you can find that information yourself.
Well, I think you had reached a point in your life, you told me, where you just felt a calling to dig deeper. You felt an urge to really research and dig much, much deeper than the average person would ever be willing to do.